Hola, soy Alex Romero, es el 8 de abril del 2026. Estamos aquí platicando con Robert Janitz. Robert es un artista alemán que vive en México desde hace varios años. Nos irá contando y tendremos la plática en inglés. Hello, Robert.
Hola, Alex. Sí, gracias por hacer todo en inglés. Mi español todavía no está al punto, creo. Pero sí.
Hey, so how long have you been living here in Mexico?
I got here really early 2020 in January. I must say I'm not really, it wasn't COVID decision that made me come here. I had rented a place already in December 2019. But then obviously when COVID happened, I already had, a situation here. So it was easier maybe to, stay, and then so since it's 6 years now. Wow, 6 years.
And where were you during the pandemic? In Mexico City, Oaxaca?
No, I stayed in Mexico City.
Okay.
I actually was living in Centro part of the pandemic. I got an apartment on Plaza Santa Domingo in that area, and it was a nice moment because Centro was empty.
Why did you decide to come down to Mexico? Where were you coming from?
Yeah, so I moved to New York. I grew up in Germany. I'm German. I moved to Paris, spent there quite some long time, and then I lived in New York for like 11 years. So when I was more curious about Mexico in the beginning. I went in 2017. I had a really good impression, and I was like, oh, great. And then, so I came from New York. I also thought, I can probably, learn some, Spanish. It felt like I was looking for a place after New York, where could that be? And I was thinking about Hong Kong was really also a great place, but Hong Kong is really far, and so I don't know. Then Mexico City. So in the pandemic, I just stayed in Mexico City.
So you've been really active, like in the shows that you have been putting here. I think it's maybe one a year or even two, some years. Which was the first solo show that you had here?
I think that was the exhibition at Casa Filardi in 2021.
How did that come about?
I had met Bernardo Saenger. We got along well, and he proposed to work together. And since a long time I have a strong interest in architecture. So I already had done a lot of Barragan stuff, seen a lot of Barragan houses, the chapel in Tlalpan, and of course Casa Filardi. And I suggested to Bernardo, wouldn't that be a great place to show?
Had you been like a long follower of Barragan's architecture?
Yeah, I mean, a follower sounds weird. What happened was, already when I was living in Paris, that maybe was Paris has some really great contemporary architecture. One of them is the La Grande Arc de Triomphe, which is in La Défense. It's this enormous kind of cubic arch. And I had met this German architect who built a lot in Berlin in that exhibition. And so, I think I had stronger interest than most of artists I knew in architecture. And then that actually, at some point I realized also, especially in New York, exhibitions, it's always about the architecture. And, more money allowed, these fantastic gallery spaces. So, of course, what Barragan had and what nobody else had was his sense of color and his sense of how these kind of hidden light sources would break into and illuminate these inner spaces.
Did you want at one point to study architecture, or you were just inspired by it?
No, I wasn't really. No, I think I was very confused when I was young. So I was leaning more towards exploring spirituality, and the meaning of life and those kind of things. I was thinking about becoming an interior architect, though. That was one of the, I guess I was 17, 18 before I decided, that I was really more of an artist.
Okay, so coming back to the Gilardi house, how did you approach the space and the selection of the work? Did you already have the work, or did you do the work specially for the show?
I worked for the show. I did a number of visits, so I really had, the different areas, the different rooms. I had my kind of visualization of the whole place, and I was, specifically thinking about, this could work well there, this could work well there, and so I was working towards, it was basically site-specific in a way. Of course, there were transportable paintings, but I made them for these special places.
And that opened during Art Week, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, somehow that whole thing came together really great, I think it was the first time Casa Gilardi really had hosted such an exhibition. And it happened at Art Week. And so there was this kind of, new surprise effect, and a lot of people came. It got, I think the New York Times magazine reviewed the exhibition. So it was a huge success in a way. And I think that really helped me, find to stay here, to connect with the local art scene. There was a really good dynamic somehow.
Yeah, it was a great show, and I think that, as you say, it really broke you into the Mexico art scene, and I think it also had like a good exposure in other countries, and that helped you along to other shows in other places, no?
Yeah, for example, the solo show I did the following year at the Musée Anahuacalli. I think that was because Carla Nino, the artist, she was really, really interested in saw my show at Casa Vilardi, and and I don't think she knew my work before, but then she saw, the potential of a dialogue that could work well together.
In the Anahuacalli show, it was really big there was a lot of work. How many paintings were they?
I think it was 30 pieces altogether. It was, I also, and what I think I had relatively short notice. The show really being confirmed, I had basically 5 months, something like that. So I decided, already to draw some of the paintings that were in local Mexican collections that would be, lent to the exhibition. And I also had some large-scale, heavy stone sculptures produced, especially for that exhibition.
Yeah, I mean, people mostly see you as an artist that works in painting, but you also work in sculpture.
Isn't that odd, right?
Tell me about some of the sculptures that were in Anahuacalli, because it was the first time that you were working with this kind of rocks.
Right. There were actually two different types of sculpture. There was the heavy rock sculptures made of cantera and recinto. Those were I made those. At first, I thought I'd make those at Ceramica Suro, large scale ceramics, but somehow I think the scale is difficult. And at some point, Jose Noé pointed me towards, why don't you make them, in stone? So I went to a quarry in Michoacán and sat down with the local guys there, and I had, made some models and made some drawings, and then they produced those. The large one was about like 3 meters high, and it was really heavy. I guess dos toneladas. So that was a new dimension. The other sculptures I made were sculptures I've used before in exhibitions. They look like cheaply made props, like decorations for a stage, and they resemble sort of palm trees or fountains made out of sheet metal. And those were upstairs in one of the long hallways.
What the bigger rock one is it's a volcano, right?
Yeah, I mean, what happened to my, like starting really to work here, I got excited about the motif of the volcano and the explosion of, what do you call it? The eruption of the volcano, especially the volcano plume, the fumarola.
Yes.
To me, I had been exploring these back of the head portraits, which sort of have a basic similar grammar. There's this kind of, there's like a shoulder section, and then there's this kind of hairdo section, and those kind of became volcanoes. And so these sculptures were, attempts to translate those kind of hybrid head volcano plumes into a three-dimensional object. and they were made of, each one had like the base, which was cantera, and the top part, I figured, there was this kind of system where two stone slabs of recinto would kind of wedge into each other and, complete the idea of a volume.
Have you kept on doing this sculpture, volcanic sculpture, or that was the last one you made of the volcano in rock?
That was that never really continued. I guess if there would be demand, I would, but in a
They're
way,
really big and heavy to keep on making them without knowing where to put them.
Yeah, it's not something you want to have in storage.
Yeah. Yes. So in a way, like a lot of going back to the architecture thing, and these shows, like also the shows that you've been doing abroad, like they always have this play and consideration for like the space of the buildings and the architecture. Like you also did recently this big show in this big building. What was it, a church, or what was the one that you did last year?
That was in Germany, in Essen. Yeah, it seems that I think at some point I really searched out different architectural settings. So let's say Galerie Valleix, this kind of modernist domestic architecture. Then I did a show at the Anahuacalli, which is fabulous, kind of pre-Hispanic vocabulary. Then I did a show in Istanbul in this 19th century villa with every room has these beautiful frescoes. And I did a project in Italy, outside of Milan, in also a church, but more, there was a Baroque church. So I was, consciously playing, how is my work looking in pre-Hispanic, the Anahuacalli situation, and how is it, looking in a Baroque setting. One has their arches, and pre-Hispanic, they ignore that kind of structural device, and they have this kind of trapezoid ways of holding up a ceiling. And I did also a project in a space by Alvaro Siza, and most recently Germany. So this guy Gottfried Böhm is also a Pritzker Prize winner. So is Barragan, so is Alvaro Siza. And yeah, I think now it seems a big trend, and maybe I hope that I was a little bit ahead of the crowd, because now it seems like everybody's trying to do, a show in Kyoto in the Zen temple or all kinds of things. Maybe just also, to have memorable pictures and to sell the merchandise. But I guess my interest was really more at, how my paintings respond to a given architectural setting.
Well, in a way, it's like a group show, no? That there's a dialogue between two visions of
Exactly.
aesthetics.
I mean, really, the Barragan one was really ideal in a way, because his vocabulary is somehow very clear, and there's no ornament, and that was really, it really reacted. It was a great kind of eye level situation. You know, it was such a fun show to work to, and then to see the paintings in those spaces, and how I think they both brought each other. I mean, do you remember at the Casa Hilargi show, I did this one ingenious installation at the edge of the swimming pool?
Yes.
These pink tiles. A lot of people never realized that was actually a piece I had installed. People thought it was part of the architecture. But I think that was really the most genius intervention of that exhibition.
That was in a way more like a sculpture meeting architecture.
Yeah. That's a good way of saying it.
It was so subtle that people even didn't notice.
Yeah. And so the other one, the recent one in Essen, it had this huge wall where they used, where the organ used to be, the organ pipes. And I had, since a long time worked on these large scale paintings with this sort of, abstract, what is it? Cursive writing. I'm not, I don't want to make them, I don't want to frame the work as such, but so I had a couple of these paintings, and that space allowed me to order them in this sequence of 2 rows, and really, I think that was the main piece in that exhibition.
The building, what was the previous use of the building?
It was a church. It was built in, I think, 1955. Gottfried Böhm was very active in post-war Germany, and especially in churches. He built a lot of churches. I guess there was the need for churches, and maybe and I think, of course, churches allow a certain liberty in conceiving a space. And I think that because it's a space of worship, it doesn't need to be, it's not an office space, and it's also not a museum. So in a way, maybe now museums, now museum spaces need all to look so flamboyant. Probably they took it, I think in any case, what do I say? I'm sorry. Museums now seem to replace churches. I think that's what people, they go to. Maybe not so much in Mexico, but in the US, but who knows here.
Yes, well, in a way, art is a new kind of religion that joins a lot of people together with under a set of values and beliefs.
Yeah, right.
Yes, and there was the other, in a way, that the other show you had in Germany, this show in König, you did this architectural gesture also, which
Yeah.
I don't know if you see that gesture also as an art piece, or you saw it more like contextualizing the work, but you did this big wall done up in a mirror kind of finish, no?
Exactly. Yeah.
What year was that?
That was 2024, I think. Yeah, 2 years ago. That building also, I mean, it's a fantastic building. It has this, huge volume. I think the ceiling height is like 10 meters. It's just huge, massive. And sort of as a joke, also I propose, why don't we put the head wall as a mirror wall, doubling the space, make it even more vast. But I was also, because I wanted to show more like overview, like a retrospective. I showed work from the last 10 years. So maybe the mirror also worked as a threshold, where maybe as the blurry vision in the mirror could be the works that come in the future. So there was that also.
That's great. And how does like Germany? I don't know. I mean, there was a big painting generation. Was it Dusseldorf, or where was the Albert Dolen and all these guys from?
Cologne.
Cologne.
There was Cologne. Düsseldorf was the famous art school. Lots of these like Lüpert's were teaching. They came from Cologne and then made it into becoming professors as the Düsseldorf Art School. And there was also there was this great moment in Berlin in the early 80s. Die neuen Wilden, the new les nouveaux fauves, like the fauve was, you remember the French movement, I think Derain and de Vlaming, I think Matisse also, early Matisse was, very colorful work. And Die Neuen Wilden was like Rainer Fetting and Salome, and there was a whole new generation of iconoclast painters in Germany. So there was that Berlin pole, and there was the Cologne pole.
And how is painting like perceived right now in Germany?
Yeah, good question. Depends on who perceives it, right? I mean,
always.
Right? I mean, Germany has so many incredible museums and such a rich production and of painting over so a long time, and it's I think it avoided death, where other countries heralded the death of painting. Somehow Germany didn't have Duchamp. I think that sort of for a long time, made painting in France impossible. But painting was actually doing well in Germany, and I think also in London had really interesting paintings. Right.
Why do you say impossible in France?
Well, I mean, Duchamp, moved away from painting himself in his own work, and moved into playing chess, and discovered, let's say, the ready-made. And I remember when I was living in Paris, people would say, "Oh, this is too retinal. Painting is too retinal. It's just eye candy. There's no conceptual dimension." And I think somebody like Albert Oehlen, for example, in the mid-80s did amazing work, where he questioned the medium with, its own means. So it was still about painting. And somehow, I don't know, it seemed like the French took a different route. And it's interesting for me to be in, when I came to Mexico, to see what type of painting has been, produced here. And I mean, not that I really am an expert in it. But for example, you mentioned Albert Oehlen. Somebody like Oehlen I'm not sure if people will, he hasn't had a solo show here. It would be great. He could have a great solo show in, at Tamayo or somewhere. But I think this type of, in a way, positive self-destruction, maybe it's not the time for that. I hope, sometime soon.
I mean, I think that the thing with painting and curators is that I think in a way curators are also artists, I think, and I think that their medium is using other artworks or things to contextualize an idea that they have. No, and we were speaking before recording about your recent visits to the new museum and this big show called New Humans. I don't remember if that's a complete title, but in a way, like painting, since the works are finished in the studio by the artists, like I think that curators don't know how to insert themselves in painting and painting shows. In a way, that's something I think sometimes.
Interesting.
I don't know how has been your working relationship with curators in a way.
Yeah, no, very good question, very good point. I find, I mean, very easily, let's say, painting in general is pushed into, okay, oh, you're a painter. That means, those can be sold, and, you can make money, and it's more, seen as a commodity, whilst, something more relational or installations, this seems to fit more into the vision of a curatorial vision. That's what you also say, and it's very interesting that painting has, I don't know. I mean, now the whole Frida craze and Diego craze. There was actually a show at MoMA, called Frida and Diego. I mean, they were hardcore communists also. And I don't know. Now seems painting, it's true, has maybe moved into, a commodity corner of, decorating spaces. And less idea-driven. I don't know. I missed your question. I think you said something else.
No, you do like the working dialogue that you've had maybe with curators in your shows or other shows.
I mean, I did have the eye of a very good curator involved for my Casa Pilati show. That was Gianni Jetzer, who I got to know in New York when he was at the Swiss Institute, and somehow I think it caught his interest too. He could have declined, you know. So he said yes to my proposal that he'd be the curator in that show. But I think one idea came recently in my head. I probably need to make some kind of publication that, you know, brings out clearer attempts to, you know, dialogue with architecture. Because I did a lot of shows since I moved to Mexico. That kind of really helped me somehow to break out of the, you know, the famous white cube, which is very New York. The white cube is just the market platform.
Yes. Well, it's a modern language for this spiritual void where the works come in and they are not tainted by its surroundings, but are it's a special place for the work to be itself and
right.
its conceptual self in a way.
Right, free of any discursive side things. Yes. When did that happen? I still, you know, do you remember seeing? Okay, there was Guggenheim who basically embraced the European avant-garde when they all came to New York, I guess, you know, due to the looming Second World War, and there was this fantastic, I think it was called Art of the 20th Century in New York.
Yes, it was Peggy Guggenheim, no?
And the walls were curved. It was like it was crazy how that space was conceived. The walls were curved, concave, I think, and the paintings were hung on these holes that came out from the wall, so they basically were floating in space. And I was like, wow, that was such a weird way of, you know, displaying works.
Yes, I mean, and they used to also use cloth and velvets and things in the installations. It wasn't a white cube.
Right. Yeah, and I think it was groundbreaking and exciting. And I mean, now the odd thing is museums must look really flamboyant from the outside, but inside they need to pretend to be white cube spaces, no?
Yes.
So
you're working on that publication, or it's just an idea now?
It's an idea. I guess publications cost money. I need to start thinking about it, make some plans, and then see who can publish it. But that would be something I'm really excited about. And in a way, it would cover, I guess it takes a year to finish it, but maybe it could, cover, maybe it would be called 7 years in Mexico.
But you had several publications recently, no? You had the
yeah, that's true. The little booklet about the Casa Galerie. I had this big publication, monographic one, that summed up my 10 years in New York. And I had this really nice small publication at Anahuacalli. That was already. I think I should have made it bigger, because bigger is better in publications.
But bigger, like bigger size or bigger edition?
Just needs to have cover, wall, like shelf space. It needs to look big when it lies on the table. It needs to fine when it's in a shelf, and it's just like competencia and not in the bookshelf. I think that's why Taschen has such a big success. Taschen, they always have these mega books.
They win the bookshelf battles.
Exactly. But I have great photo material. I think it would be also, to manifest these spaces. It's probably better if it's, a nice size.
Like, how do you approach a painting? Like, do you have like the composition colors, an idea beforehand, or do you start just working on the painting? I mean, you work on the painting standing with the canvas on the floor, and that's normal, like a kind of action painting in a way, which I don't think people realize that, but I see your work like Jackson Pollock in that way, no? I mean, it's not that messy, but it's really a full body thing.
Right. When I was at MoMA, I was standing in front of a Pollock painting, and there was this couple closer to me in front of the Pollock painting, and he says to her, "Look, there's a cigarette butt in the corner up there." So yeah, you're right. I work. I think it's not entirely true, but I mostly work flat because I work with a paint material that is very liquid, and that needs to be, I prefer to apply on a flat surface. They go through phases, drying time, then they stand up at the wall. I need to look at them. I think recently I came to more, layering colors, and more time consuming also. I think at some point I really did, basically a painting was finished in an hour, and there was very much action painting, you're right. Now I think not that I would say it's time to reflect. I don't really, like there's, pictures of Gerhard Richter famously, sitting in front of a painting, staring at it for hours. I don't think I would do that. But I keep them in my, I have a large studio, which is great, so I can see all these works in progress, and I have them in mind. And I think part of my process I don't even reveal to myself, seems related to intuition. But they progress over time, and I often work on a group of pieces that sort of work as a family together, and they form each other.
And coming back to the paintings, like you studied Sanskrit, right?
Yes.
In college, or where was it?
I was actually, I applied to the Stadel School in Frankfurt, and they didn't take me. I was, at that time, I was very shy also. I didn't have to go, when I was a young man, military service was mandatory in Germany. Somehow my physical constitution wasn't, deemed valid to become a soldier, or so I was done with school early, and with 19 I think I applied for art school, and they didn't, I didn't make it. But I think also I didn't understand how to, play the game and, Anyway, so then I moved towards it was called comparative religion, and I also studied art history, and then that seemed like bullshit. Comparative religions. I had for that to, I needed a classical language. That's how it went. So I was studying Sanskrit as like a side topic, and then I switched like into maybe the third semester I made Sanskrit my main study, and did a master's degree in, it's called Indian philology. So I translated the text from Sanskrit into German. And once I was done, I was like 27. I just moved back into painting.
So in a way, like unconsciously, some of that might be in the paintings.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I had never really made that until somebody else did. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking. If you look at the calligraphy of the shape of these Sanskrit letters, I mean, maybe it was both. I mean, I must say I also studied calligraphy, like Chinese calligraphy. So I guess, the idea of mark making and writing seemed always so close to me and intriguing. And so maybe there was, one approach to, look at what can I do with brush. Let's leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I know. So you spent some time in Colorado, right?
Yeah, one of my, I guess after I was really, I realized I'm not gonna be at art school. I think I had some kind of early identity crisis, and I turned to Zen Buddhism, meditation, and pursued that during my university year studying Sanskrit. So one of the most intense experiences was spending 3 months in this tent city in Colorado, in the Rocky Mountains, studying Buddhism, like Buddhist scripture, Buddhist meditation, Mahayana, Bodhisattva, all those things. And I think there was a really profound, let's say, study. It was really interesting. We weren't just kind of, doing zazen all day and then get hit with a stick, and really intellectual study also. And
were you involved in the Naropa University like arts program, or?
No. Some of my friends actually were, they went to Naropa Institute in Boulder, Colorado, and studied. You could study dance, for example. And there was some interesting stuff. They had contemplative psychology. So for example, I did, what do you call it? A sort of psychology program in these, where you would be in these colored rooms. There were 5 rooms. One was white, one was yellow, one was red, a blue one, and a green one. Each room had a certain shape of windows, and you take a particular physical posture in each room, and it was really interesting how it affects you to spend time in this red room or the green room. So there was this, it wasn't just it became very, in a way, you study maybe emotional fields, like how it's not about just thinking. Like the whole bigger picture is like you swim in these emotions. I guess in a way that whole Buddhist study helped me, to be, what do you say? I think I had self-destructive edge, and it helped me to understand how that self-destructive moment can be a creative moment in the process of a painting. So I could bring awareness to that and kind of go beyond it. Does that make any sense?
Yes, yes. I mean,
now I'm
the
not.
other day I was asking. Asking AI like why do a lot of Buddhist masters are also poets, and it said that it's because in a way all these feelings or things that you experience in these states of meditation and awareness that there's all these things that maybe you can't put into normal coherent like words or narratives, and that maybe poetry is an abstract way to try to transmit those visions without being like too structured or formal.
Mm-hmm.
So
I did meet, for example, when I was in this meditation scene in Boulder, Colorado, Allen Ginsberg, and there was this, meeting, let's say, I think, of, this experimental stream of consciousness poetry, American beat poets were doing, and, Buddhism. And of course, it's, let's say, speaking is maybe not easier, but it's more immaterial than making a painting or a sculpture. And I think so that would be the, speaking is the perfect canvas. And language allows this kind of, I don't want to say creation, but, to take, I mean, it's funny because in a way, I want to say architecture, because, a poem can open up all these spaces. And yeah, I think that maybe those, it's it's a great way of expressing something you cannot otherwise formulate. Like, for example, I mean, some of the Buddhist teachers also do painting and calligraphy, but I think none of that is really as free as it could be. I know, I mean, that's a whole big discussion for another hour.
Yes, we've already got to the end of the hour, so let's leave the talk here at this moment.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm gonna stop the recording.